The cameras flashed, the crowd froze. And just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession.
It was instant, like completely overnight.
The headline we are building this entire deep dive around today is literally Twin Peaks star Lara Flynn Boyle just made her first public appearance in years.
Which is such a dramatic way to phrase it.
It really is. Welcome to Starscope Report, the deep dive where Jordan and Jamie uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals.
Exactly. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today, we are unpacking the intense media obsession surrounding this 90s icon. We've pulled from a whole stack of recent sources, everything from, Closer Weekly and OK Magazine to YouTube pop culture updates.
Plus some really fascinating retrospective essays on her entire career.
Right. And our mission for you, the listener, is to figure out why the media insists on pushing this disappearing star narrative. Because when you look at her actual life, it completely shatters all those predictable Hollywood tropes.
It totally defies them.
So let's get into the specifics of this sighting. May of 2026. She is 56 years old, taking a walk in her Bel Air neighborhood.
Just a totally normal walk.
Literally just a walk. She had on a gray crew neck sweatshirt that said Irish across the front.
Yeah.
Khaki pants, white sneakers, no makeup on, smoking a cigarette, and just walking her rescue dog. This cute little pup named Shrimp.
Shrimp, I love that name.
Yeah.
But the media reaction to this was just wild.
By Tuesday of that week, you had half the internet calling her this tragic, unkempt recluse, and then the other half was circulating these bizarre rumors that she was about to be named Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
It is a staggering level of projection, to place all of that on someone who is quite literally just taking their dog down the block.
She's just walking Shrimp.
Exactly. But that projection is exactly what happens when the pop culture machine encounters a figure it no longer controls. The coverage of that May 2026 sighting is just this perfect masterclass in media dissonance. Well, if you look at how a YouTube channel like Access News framed those paparazzi photos, they called it a graceful return.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they noted she looked relaxed in cozy sweats, basically embracing this quiet, grounded lifestyle.
Which feels like a perfectly sane way to describe a Tuesday morning stroll.
Right. But then you flip over to OK Magazine, and they're covering those exact same photos. Their headline uses the word recluse.
Jeez.
They describe her as unkempt and disheveled. And honestly, the only evidence they offer for this huge, tragic downfall is the fact that she was wearing khakis and holding a cigarette.
That is, why do we act like a woman walking her dog is a major cinematic event?
Because the algorithm demands it. That dissonance reveals this profound glitch in how celebrity media operates. The entertainment news machine demands a strict binary narrative for older actresses.
Right, there's no middle ground.
None. They are not permitted a middle ground. The story either has to be a heartbreaking cautionary tale of a star who lost her glamour, or it must be a triumphant, glossy comeback.
So just existing comfortably outside the spotlight is treated like an error code.
Exactly.
It's like the media is fundamentally offended by her normalcy. Like imagine someone photographing you buying dish soap at the grocery store in your sweatpants.
Oh, I would be horrified.
Right. And then the next day, there's a multi-page think piece analyzing how you've lost your edge and surrendered to despair.
That's ridiculous.
We would call that stalking if it happened to a private citizen. But because she was on the cover of Rolling Stone 30 years ago, it's considered journalism.
Well, the key word there is was. Her image in the 90s was heavily curated by studios and publicists.
Right.
So the absence of that curation today isn't a symptom of some personal crisis. It's a conscious withdrawal from the performance of fame.
And we don't even have to guess if it's a conscious withdrawal because she told us directly.
She did.
In 2024, she did this interview with People magazine to promote an indie film she starred in called Mother Couch. She was alongside Ewan McGregor in that one.
Oh, right.
And she aggressively rejected the whole comeback framing. Her quote was, "You don't want an article to read, Boyle's second chance, or look who's back, I'm right here."
I love that. I'm right here.
Yeah. She never actually left the building. She just stopped using the megaphone. And that's not even the wildest part of her story. Wait until you hear how she got treated on her very first major movie.
Oh, this part is just brutal.
If you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed because we've got even crazier stories ahead in this deep dive.
We really do. So that's psychological resilience, her ability to firmly state, I'm right here against all this industry pressure. That was forged in the crucible of her very first Hollywood experience.
The ultimate letdown.
Right. To understand her current relationship with the media, we have to look at how the studio system introduced itself to her.
You're talking about the Dead Poets Society incident, which is genuinely one of the most heartbreaking professional betrayals I've read about in a long time.
It really is. Flashback to 1989.
Okay, 1989. She's a young, rising actor. She lands the role of Ginny Danbury in Peter Weir's Dead Poets Society.
Which we all know becomes this colossal cultural touchstone.
Exactly. It wins an Oscar, it launches careers. It's a massive deal. So she films her scenes, wraps her work, and she goes to the premiere with her mother.
A moment that should literally be the crowning achievement of a young artist's life.
She's sitting in the theater waiting for her scenes, and she keeps leaning over to her mom, whispering, like, here comes my scene, wait, here comes my scene.
Oh, no.
And then the credits roll. She had been completely erased from the final cut of the film.
Entirely cut.
Yes. And absolutely nobody from the production had bothered to inform her.
The mechanics behind how something like that happens are just a harsh lesson in Hollywood compartmentalization.
How does nobody tell her?
Well, in the studio system, post-production exists in a total silo. The director and the editors are shaping the narrative, the executives are watching test screenings, and the actors, especially young emerging actors, they are viewed merely as raw material.
It's just footage.
Right. Once the footage is captured, the studio's obligation to the actor often just ends, legally and culturally.
It's like ghosting, but on a multi-million-dollar corporate scale. Imagine doing a massive project at work. You invite your family to see the big presentation, and you discover the company just quietly erased your name and changed the locks without even sending an email.
It shatters the illusion that acting is a collaborative partnership.
It totally does. That level of systemic indifference would make most people abandon the industry entirely.
But rather than quitting, she pivots. And she pivots into an environment that is the exact antithesis of that cold corporate studio structure.
She steps straight into the strange, brilliant mind of David Lynch.
Yes, she does. Landing the iconic role of Donna Hayward in the 1990 phenomenon Twin Peaks.
Which is just a massive shift.
It is. Donna is the moral anchor of a show dealing with deeply surreal and traumatizing themes. So it required an immense amount of emotional vulnerability.
Right.
But it's not just the screen time that mattered. It was Lynch's highly unusual directing style that provided an antidote to her experience on Dead Poets Society.
The sources have this really great detail about how Lynch directed her that illustrates it perfectly.
Oh, the pilot scene.
Yeah, they were shooting this very long, intense scene for the pilot, doing take after take, maybe 30 or 40 setups.
Which is exhausting.
Right. And instead of giving her technical, results-oriented notes from a monitor, like most directors would, Lynch walks up to her, leans in close, and whispers, "Think of how gently a deer has to move in the snow."
I mean, that is just the essence of Lynch's philosophy.
It really is.
He bypasses the analytical brain completely, the part of an actor that worries about lighting and hitting marks, and he just directs the subconscious.
And Boyle said it worked instantly. She didn't even ask for clarification. She just understood the emotional frequency he was asking for. She actually referred to the Twin Peaks set as a piece of heaven. Yeah. And following Lynch's death in early 2025, she paid tribute to him. She called him the true Willy Wonka of filmmaking and acknowledged she got the golden ticket by getting to work with him.
The Willy Wonka analogy is incredibly precise.
Because it was his own little world.
Exactly. Lynch operated this eccentric, fiercely protective factory where the standard rules of Hollywood simply did not apply. He shielded his cast from the transactional reality of the business.
But of course, an actor cannot live inside the chocolate factory forever.
No, they can't. And when she leaves that protective bubble, that's when the narrative of her being quote-unquote difficult or disappearing really begins to take shape.
Later in the deep dive, we'll talk about the shocking twist with her hit TV show. But first, let's talk about why she actually left Twin Peaks.
Right. It really starts with her sudden departure from that universe. She did not return to play Donna in the 1992 prequel film Fire Walk with Me.
Right, the role was recast with Moira Kelly.
Now, the official public relations explanation was just a standard scheduling conflict. She was booking major studio comedies like Wayne's World, dramas like Where the Day Takes You.
Which is believable enough.
Sure. But the persistent industry rumor points to something much more personal. She had been dating her Twin Peaks co-star, Kyle MacLachlan.
Oh.
And they broke up right around the time the prequel was moving into production. So the Whisper Network claims she simply set a boundary and refused to work with her ex.
Which, is totally fair. And we saw this pattern of absence solidified decades later. When Lynch revived the show in 2017 for The Return, she wasn't involved.
No, she wasn't.
Lynch actually gave a notoriously icy quote to the press about it. He just curtly said, "This is a story that takes place without her."
It is a cold statement.
Mm-hmm.
But we really have to reevaluate her withdrawal from these massive projects through a modern lens.
Especially considering her 2024 comments.
Yes. In 2024, she contributed her voice to the broader #MeToo conversation. And again, we're just impartially sharing what the sources report here.
Right, absolutely.
She revealed that her navigation of 90s Hollywood was fraught with inappropriate situations. She explicitly stated, "I've walked out of meetings and had repercussions for it."
Which completely reframes the whole disappearing star trope for me.
It totally changes the context.
Right. Did she actually lose her footing in the industry, or did the industry quietly lock the door because she refused to comply? If a young, highly bankable actress walks out of a toxic room, the trade papers don't write an inspiring article about her maintaining her boundaries.
No, they definitely don't. They just label her difficult to work with. Power dynamics in the 1990s entertainment ecosystem relied entirely on compliance.
So boundary setting was basically self-sabotage.
Functionally, yes. When a woman removed herself from an environment she deemed unsafe or professionally compromising, the system interpreted that as a breach of contract, and they penalized her by restricting future access to elite projects.
And that brutal systemic machinery wasn't just limited to film. We really have to look at her transition into television, because she absolutely dominated the landscape for years.
She was everywhere.
She played Assistant District Attorney Helen Gamble on The Practice for a staggering 116 episodes between 1997 and 2003.
And she was incredible in it. She earned an Emmy nomination.
Right, she drove massive ratings. She was the face of ABC's primetime lineup.
But network television is an entirely different beast from independent film.
Yeah.
It is this grueling, relentless schedule, but it offers unparalleled financial security and visibility.
That is until the network economics shift.
Exactly.
Because the end of her run on The Practice is just a jarring look at how the industry's harsh reality actually works. In 2003, heading into its 8th season, ABC and the production studio basically decided the show was getting too expensive.
So what did they do?
Instead of writing a graceful exit or renegotiating, they simply fired almost the entire main cast, including Boyle, in a single day. Cost-cutting revamp.
Wow. And to understand why a network would gut its own hit show like that, you have to look at the mechanics of television syndication and actor contracts.
Right. Follow the money.
Always. By season 7, standard network contracts expire, which triggers massive salary renegotiations. At the exact same time, the studio has already produced enough episodes to sell the show into lucrative rerun syndication.
So the core cast has already served their primary financial purpose.
Precisely. The network realizes they can slash the budget, hire cheaper actors, and continue milking the brand name for advertising revenue without paying the premium salaries of the stars who built the audience in the first place.
It's literally just a spreadsheet decision that treats foundational talent as an expendable line item.
Exactly.
I always think of it like professional sports. You're the MVP of your team, you drag them to the playoffs for 6 straight years, you sell all the jerseys, and then one morning you read on ESPN that the billionaire owner traded you out of nowhere just to save salary cap space.
It's so jarring.
It has nothing to do with your talent, it's just brutal math. And stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because her personal life at this time was just as chaotic.
Oh, absolutely. Compounding all that professional instability was the fact that she was navigating the absolute peak of 90s tabloid culture, which scrutinized her personal life with an intensity that is just hard to fathom today.
Yeah, tabloids were completely unhinged. The sources highlight this wild story from the late 90s.
Oh, the David Spade one.
Yes. So she was dating comedian David Spade, and she ends up leaving him for Jack Nicholson, who is over 30 years older than her.
Which is a whole story in itself.
Right, and according to the lore, Nicholson actually asked her out right in front of Spade, but Spade didn't officially realize he had been dumped until he opened a newspaper and read a paparazzi report about Boyle and Nicholson getting into a minor car crash together in the Hollywood Hills.
I mean, can you imagine? Your most private, chaotic moments are immediately packaged and sold as public entertainment.
It's insane.
Living under that microscope while simultaneously dealing with the cold corporate math of the television industry. I mean, that would leave most people deeply cynical about the business and its treatment of women.
Which really makes her 2024 comments on Hollywood ageism the most surprising part of our research today.
They really are.
Given everything she survived, you would expect her to be leading the charge against the industry's double standards. But instead, she offered this incredibly blunt, almost controversial take.
What did she say?
She said, and I quote, "The thing that gets my goat is when actresses talk about ageism in Hollywood. Ageism is human nature. It's not Hollywood's fault. It's all of our fault, myself included. I like looking at pretty people on the camera."
Now, it is crucial to view that statement objectively, as it definitely runs counter to the prevailing cultural movement that seeks to dismantle systemic ageism.
Right. We're not taking a side here, just unpacking her viewpoint.
Exactly. She is fundamentally refusing the mantle of the victim. By framing ageism as an innate biological reality of human preference, rather than a targeted malicious conspiracy by studio executives, she is employing a really fascinating psychological defense mechanism.
She's essentially saying, the game isn't rigged against me specifically. The game is just shallow, and I knew the rules when I sat down at the table.
Right. By accepting the superficiality as a baseline truth, she frees herself from the exhausting labor of resentment.
That makes a lot of sense.
She strips the industry of its power to hurt her feelings. It is a ruthlessly independent, almost Darwinian perspective on her own profession.
She just made peace with reality. But the irony is, while she's living this quiet, realistic life, the internet is still generating digital hallucinations about her.
It never stops.
Which brings us back to that weird week in May 2026. At the exact same time she was being photographed in her sweatpants, this rumor exploded online from a site called Media Mass,
Oh,
claiming Lara Flynn Boyle was the frontrunner for Time magazine's Person of the Year.
which is an honor typically reserved for, presidents, tech billionaires, and historical movements.
Exactly. And the article itself was from a known satire and rumor farm. It literally had a disclaimer right on the page admitting it was a hoax.
But the algorithmic ecosystem of social media doesn't care about disclaimers.
Not at all. Twitter users started debating it in earnest. People were genuinely asking, wait, what did she do this year? Is this real?
It just perfectly illustrates how modern algorithmic news operates. A platform prioritizes engagement over accuracy.
Right.
When a recognizable 90s name is injected into a surreal premise like that, the resulting confusion generates clicks. And the algorithm rewards that by pushing the hoax further into the mainstream feed.
It also proves how society treats celebrities from that specific era. Because she isn't posting on Instagram every day, she isn't constantly controlling her own narrative, she just becomes a blank canvas.
Yeah, the internet just projects whatever bizarre fantasy it wants onto her.
Either painting her as a tragic recluse walking her dog, or memeing her into Time's Person of the Year. But if you look at her actual life today, it is incredibly grounded and stable.
The contrast between the digital noise and her physical reality is really the most compelling takeaway here.
It truly is. She has been happily married to real estate investor Donald Ray Thomas II since 2006.
2 decades of a quiet, stable marriage.
Yeah. They split their time between Los Angeles and Texas. She occasionally takes on indie projects she cares about, like Death in Texas in 2020 or Mother, Couch. But only when the script interests her and it fits her schedule.
She extracted the financial independence and creative freedom from her early success and simply discarded the toxic elements she no longer had use for.
Exactly. She observed the Hollywood machine, understood its mechanics, and eventually just decided she no longer wished to provide it with raw material.
It's honestly inspiring.
So as you go about the rest of your day, we want to leave you with this final thought to mull over.
Yeah.
When a highly visible person steps away from the relentless glare of public life, our cultural default is usually to assume they failed. We assume they lost their spark or the industry threw them away.
That's always the narrative.
Always. But look at a woman walking her dog in Bel Air, completely unbothered by the cameras, living quietly on her own terms. What if walking away from the constant, exhausting, judgmental gaze of millions of strangers isn't a defeat at all?
Right.
What if reclaiming your anonymity is actually the ultimate victory?
I think it just might be.
You've been listening to Start Scope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.